doing my video report on pneumonia, which is a respiratory infection. What it's caused by. Pneumonia can be caused by bacteria, viruses, aspiration. For myself, I've had pneumonia twice, and I got it from simply being out in a humid area, and it just kept accumulating in my lungs to where my body couldn't compensate for it, and almost been hospitalized for it. So I know how that feels. If you have pneumonia, more than likely you're going to be accompanied by a fever, because you're sick, obviously. Chest pain, because it's in your lungs, it's affecting your lungs, they're inflamed, it's going to hurt to breathe, it's going to hurt regardless. You're going to be coughing up sputum, because you have all that excess fluid built up in your lungs, and your body's trying to compensate, trying to get it out of the system. And then everything else that follows a fever. So you have your nausea, you're obviously vomiting, sweating, anything the body needs to do to compensate for it. Fatigue, it's another one. The causes, like I've already went over, bacteria and viruses. You breathe it into your system, your body can't compensate, it can't fight it off. So now you have all this buildup of fluid in your system, and it sucks. You cough, it hurts. It sounds like there's a little baby rattles in your lungs rattling around, and it's usually seen in children under the age of 2 and adults older than 65. Doesn't mean that anyone in between that can't have it. It's just that the older and younger generations can't fight off the infection, and they're at risk for sepsis and well, that's worst case scenario, but fever, and their body just can't fight it off. So more than likely their body is more applicable, maybe that's the right word, to have that and can't fight it off. The older generation's the same way. Their immune system's kind of down the toilet. They can't battle things as easy, just like peds. If you go to the hospital, obviously you're gonna get monitored. They could give you antibiotics, cough syrup, fever reduction pills. Not really much else to do. Your body has to fight it off. So with the help of those, hopefully you can come out of it and carry on with life. As EMS providers, if we were to roll up on a scene and seeing someone with pneumonia, the underlying cause would be, for example, let's just say it was aspiration pneumonia. They breathed something into their lungs, which caused the pneumonia to start. It couldn't fight it off. It accumulated into pneumonia. Now they have all this fluid built up in their lungs. You're on scene. They're having trouble breathing. You have all this mucus built up. They're coughing, crackles down the bilateral, and so maybe CPAP, if that works. If the fluid's messing with them that bad, if it's that high, like a COPD patient, prime example, uses CPAP to suppress the liquid into their lungs, hopefully allowing the upper respiratory tract in the lungs, obviously, to perfuse. You have all that fluid in your lungs, pathophysiology, and it isn't perfusing. The oxygen is going in and it can't reach the deep alveoli. It can't get in there and perfuse. It cannot supply the body with an adequate amount of oxygen. So back to that scene, CPAP, or at least, if anything, putting oxygen into their system for the upper respiratory to perfuse at 100% oxygen saturation. Besides that, maybe an albuterol treatment. anti-inflammatories, so maybe some Solumetal. I'm not too sure on that, but you would want some fever reduction for sure. You would want to control the airway, make sure that they are perfusing the best to their capabilities of what you have to give them. And transport. And at that time, I mean, they might even be septic, systematic. So you're going to be dealing with that also, with fever, low BP. You can see hypovolemia in there, so they can be shocky. So treat for shock and get them to a hospital. Besides that, though, there's not much else you're gonna do. I mean, if it's really serious and they're coughing stuff up and can't control it, you could suction and just depending on what they're on, CPAP, or I guess really worst case scenario, breathing for them with a BVM. You'd want that oxygen on and the suction on standby in case they ended up choking on their own secretions. But I think I hit everything on that. There's probably some more things pathophysiology-wise that I didn't go over, but I think I hit most of the spots I needed to.